Dr. Jack Miller woke up to the same view he'd seen for 5 years straight. Gray walls. Flickering lights. The hum of dying air filters that nobody bothered to fix anymore. The mining station at the edge of human territory had been abandoned for a decade before he'd arrived. Now it was just him, a few maintenance bots, and the endless silence of space. He made coffee from recycled water that tasted like metal. The military had taken everything from him 5 years ago. His rank, his medical license, his career, his reputation. All because he'd done what he was trained to do. He'd saved lives. The problem was, those lives belonged to enemy soldiers during the frontier wars. The trial had been quick. The verdict was obvious before it even started. Treason. Aiding the enemy. Betrayal of humanity. The judge had looked at him with such disgust, as if Jack had personally killed human soldiers instead of trying to keep anyone from dying. They'd given him a choice. Prison or exile. Jack chose the stars. At least out here, nobody looked at him like he was a monster. His days were simple. Wake up. Check the station systems. Eat whatever rations were left. Read old medical journals on his datapad. Sleep. Repeat. Sometimes he wondered if this was really living or just existing. Most days he couldn't tell the difference anymore. The message arrived on a Tuesday. Or maybe it was Wednesday. Time didn't mean much out here. His console beeped with an incoming transmission, which was strange because nobody sent him messages anymore. His family had stopped writing after the first year. His friends had vanished the moment the verdict came down. Even the supply ships just dropped cargo and left without a word. Jack stared at the screen. The encryption was military grade. Actually, it was better than military grade. It took 3 full days for his outdated computer to crack it. During those 3 days, Jack barely slept. Who would send him an encrypted message? Was it the military coming to arrest him for something new? Was it someone trying to finish what the trial had started? When the message finally decoded, Jack's coffee went cold in his hands. It was from the Lupaxian Empire. The wolf aliens. The same species humanity had been fighting for over 30 years. The same species whose soldiers Jack had saved, the ones that destroyed his life. His finger hovered over the delete button. Every instinct told him to erase it. Nothing good could come from aliens who'd spent decades trying to kill humans. Especially not from aliens who knew his name and where he lived. But something stopped him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was the tiny hope that someone, somewhere, still needed him for something. He opened the message. Dr. Miller. We require your expertise. Our greatest warrior is dying and we cannot help her. You are our last option. Jack read it 3 times. The Lupaxians were asking him for help. The proud, brutal wolf aliens who never showed weakness, who never admitted defeat, who would rather die than ask an enemy for anything. They were asking him. A second message came through almost immediately, as if they'd been waiting for him to open the first one. It contained coordinates to a location deep in Lupaxian territory and a single sentence that made Jack's blood run cold. She refuses all treatment. 3 of our physicians have fled. We need someone expendable. Expendable. That word sat heavy in Jack's chest. They didn't want him because he was good. They wanted him because if something went wrong, if their warrior killed him, nobody would care. Nobody would ask questions. A disgraced human doctor dying in alien territory wouldn't even make the news. Jack stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars stretched forever in every direction. Somewhere out there, people lived real lives. They had families, jobs, purpose. And here he was, slowly rotting away on a forgotten station because he'd committed the crime of caring about life. He looked at his medical kit gathering dust in the corner. He hadn't opened it in 2 years. What was the point? There was nobody to help out here. But now someone needed help. Even if that someone was an alien. Even if it was probably a trap. Even if they'd called him expendable to his face. Jack pulled the kit from the shelf and checked the supplies. Most of it was still good. The diagnostic tools still worked. His hands remembered the weight of the instruments even after all this time. He sent a reply. Just 2 words. I'm coming. Within an hour, a Lupaxian ship appeared at the station. They hadn't waited for his answer. They'd known he would say yes. Maybe because they'd studied his file. Maybe because they understood that a man with nothing left to lose was the most dangerous kind of man to gamble on. Jack boarded the ship with his kit and didn't look back at the station. Whatever happened next, at least it wouldn't be boring. At least someone, somewhere, thought he was worth something. Even if it was just as a disposable pawn. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed and Jack closed his eyes. For the first time in 5 years he felt something other than emptiness. He felt needed. The Lupaxian ship docked with a fortress that looked like something out of a nightmare. It wasn't built. It was carved. The entire moon had been hollowed out and turned into a military base, all sharp edges and cold stone. Jack could see gun turrets tracking their approach, enough firepower to vaporize a small fleet. 2 guards met him at the airlock. They were huge, easily 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur with eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Neither spoke. They just motioned for him to follow. Jack gripped his medical kit tighter and walked between them. The corridors were empty. That struck Jack as odd. A military fortress should be bustling with activity. Soldiers, officers, support staff. But there was nothing. Just endless hallways of stone and steel, lit by lights that flickered and hummed. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. The guards kept their distance from him. Not because they were being polite. Jack could smell their nervousness. Lupaxians communicated through scent, and even his human nose could pick up the sharp tang of fear. These warriors, bred for combat, were afraid. That made Jack's heart beat faster. They walked for what felt like 20 minutes, going deeper into the fortress. Down ramps. Through security doors that hissed open and sealed behind them. Each door was thicker than the last. Each corridor more isolated. They weren't just keeping people out. They were keeping something in. Finally, they stopped at a massive door. It was reinforced steel, the kind used on bunkers and armories. Deep scratches covered the surface, gouges that had torn through metal like paper. Whatever was behind that door was strong. Dangerously strong. A commander waited there. Jack could tell by the markings on his uniform. The wolf alien looked tired, like he hadn't slept in weeks. His fur was matted, his movements slow. "Dr. Miller," the commander said. His English was good but heavily accented. "She is through there." Jack looked at the door, then back at the commander. "What's her condition?" "Unstable. Violent. She has refused all food for 6 days. Refuses treatment. Refuses to speak." The commander's ears drooped. 3 of our best physicians attempted to help her. All 3 fled within minutes. "Fled," Jack repeated. "Not removed. Not escorted out. Fled." The commander nodded slowly. "She did not harm them. But the fear. The pheromones she releases. They trigger primal terror in our species. It is a defense mechanism we cannot control." Jack remembered reading about that in his medical training. Lupaxians could release chemical signals when distressed, signals that caused panic in other Lupaxians. It was an evolutionary trait from when they were pack hunters. A wounded wolf would signal danger, and the pack would scatter to survive. "Humans can't smell pheromones," Jack said. "Yes. That is why we called you." The commander gestured to the door. "We will monitor from outside. When you wish to leave, signal us through the intercom." "When? Not if?" Jack asked, catching the word choice. The commander's ears flattened against his skull. A sign of shame. The others lasted less than 10 minutes before they begged to be released. "We do not expect you to fare better. But we must try." Jack took a breath. His hands were shaking slightly. He tightened his grip on the medical kit to steady them. "All right. Let's do this." The door opened with a heavy clunk of locks disengaging. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell that made Jack's nose wrinkle. It was wild. Animal. The smell of something living on instinct and rage. He stepped inside. The door sealed behind him with a finality that made his stomach drop. The room was dark. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Jack's eyes adjusted slowly. The walls were destroyed. Deep claw marks everywhere, some gouges so deep he could fit his fist inside them. Furniture was shredded. Medical equipment lay broken in corners. This wasn't just damage. This was fury given physical form. In the far corner, something moved. Jack's breath caught. Commander Thora was massive. 7 feet of pure muscle covered in gray and white fur. Even curled up, she looked like she could tear him apart without effort. Her shoulders were broader than any human's. Her claws, even retracted, were visible and sharp. She lifted her head and Jack saw her eyes. They glowed amber in the darkness, reflecting the red emergency lights. Those eyes locked onto him with an intensity that made his survival instincts scream to run. "Another fool," she growled. Her voice was deep, rough, like gravel grinding together. "Come to fix the broken weapon?" Jack's throat was dry. Every part of him wanted to turn around and pound on that door until they let him out. But he'd come too far. Had nothing left to lose anyway. He set down his medical kit slowly and sat on the floor, keeping about 5 feet of distance between them. Close enough to talk. Far enough to maybe react if she lunged. "Not here to fix anything," Jack said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "Just here to talk." Thora's lips pulled back, showing teeth designed for tearing flesh. I don't need talk. I need... Her voice cracked, the growl breaking into something raw and painful. Leave before I hurt you. Can't do that, Jack said calmly. I came a long way. And honestly, I've got nowhere else to be. Thora's claws extended with a scraping sound that set Jack's teeth on edge. They scraped against the stone floor, leaving fresh marks. But she didn't attack. She just stared at him, those amber eyes searching for something. Something in his voice. The emptiness. The exhaustion. The resignation of a man who'd already lost everything. It sounded familiar. It sounded like how she felt. The tension held for a long moment. Then Thora's claws slowly retracted. She didn't move closer, didn't speak. But she didn't tell him to leave again either. Jack let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. It was a start. The first day Jack sat on the floor for 2 hours. Thora didn't speak. Didn't move. Just watched him with those amber eyes, waiting for him to give up and leave like the others. But Jack didn't leave. When his time was up, he stood, told her he'd be back tomorrow, and walked out. Day 2 was the same. Day 3 she turned her back to him. Day 4 she pretended to sleep. By day 7 the guard stopped asking if he was sure about going back in. Jack didn't push. Didn't ask questions. Didn't try to examine her or take readings or do any of the doctor things she expected. He just sat there, sometimes reading on his datapad, sometimes eating his lunch, sometimes just staring at the walls like she did. Existing in her space without demanding anything from her. On day 9, Thora spoke. Why do you keep coming back? Jack looked up from his datapad. Because you're still alive. That means there's still hope. Hope for what? Her voice was bitter. I'm broken. Useless. A weapon that can't fire anymore. You're not a weapon, Jack said quietly. You're a person who's hurting. Thora laughed, but it sounded painful. Like broken glass. She didn't speak again that day. It was day 14 when she finally told him. The words came out slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. The mission. The colony ship. 3,000 refugees fleeing a war zone looking for safety. And hidden among them, a biological weapon that would have killed billions if it reached populated space. They gave me 10 minutes to decide, Thora said, her voice hollow. Scans showed the weapon was active, spreading through the ship. We couldn't board. Couldn't extract anyone. It was destroy the ship or let it reach the colonies. Jack listened without interrupting. His medical training had taught him that sometimes people needed to talk without someone trying to fix it immediately. I gave the order, Thora continued. One shot. The ship was gone in seconds. 3,000 lives. Families. Children. All dead because I pulled the trigger. Her claws dug into the stone floor. The math was simple. 3,000 to save 3 billion. Any commander would make the same choice. But you can't stop seeing their faces, Jack said softly. Thora's head snapped toward him. How did you know? Because I see faces too. Every soldier I couldn't save. Every enemy I treated who died anyway. They come back at night when it's quiet. Jack met her eyes. The math being right doesn't make it hurt less. For the first time, Thora's aggressive posture softened. Your people would tell me to suppress it, she said bitterly. Channel the pain into rage. Be the weapon I was born to be. That's what Lupaxian commanders do. Feel nothing. Kill efficiently. Move on. My people would tell you to feel it, Jack replied. That guilt means you're still human. He paused, catching himself. Still a person. That you care about those lives you took. That's not weakness, Thora. That's what makes you more than a weapon. Thora's ears perked up, genuine surprise in her eyes. Humans feel like this? After killing? All the time, Jack said. Soldiers come home and can't sleep. Can't eat. Can't stop thinking about what they did even when it was necessary. It destroys them if they don't deal with it. He smiled sadly. It's why they kicked me out of the military. I couldn't stop seeing enemy soldiers as people. They were bleeding, dying, calling for help. I had to save them. Didn't matter what uniform they wore. And they punished you for that? Thora asked, genuinely confused. Took everything from me. Career. Reputation. Freedom. Jack shrugged. Cost me everything. But I'd do it again. Because those lives mattered even if my people couldn't see it. For the first time in months, Thora's shoulders relaxed. The constant tension in her body eased slightly. Maybe humans aren't as weak as we thought. After that day things changed. Jack started introducing her to human methods of dealing with trauma. Things that would seem strange to Lupaxian military doctrine but were standard in human medicine. He taught her breathing exercises. Simple patterns. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, release for 4. It sounded stupid at first, Thora said. But after a few days, she admitted the howling in her mind got quieter when she focused on her breathing. Jack brought music. Human music from Earth. Classical pieces mostly. Soft piano melodies and string quartets. Nothing aggressive or military. Thora had never heard anything like it. Lupaxian music was all drums and war chants. This was different. It made her feel something other than rage or guilt. How does this help? She asked while listening to a piece by some composer Jack named. It doesn't fix anything, Jack admitted. But it gives your mind something else to focus on. Something beautiful instead of painful. Even for a few minutes, that matters. He talked to her about processing grief instead of burying it. About understanding that feeling bad about terrible things didn't make you weak. It made you sane. He shared stories from human psychology, about soldiers who healed by facing their trauma instead of running from it. Jack even started cooking human food in her room. Simple stuff. Rice. Vegetables. Things that tasted nothing like Lupaxian military rations. The first time he made soup, Thora stared at it suspiciously. It's not poisoned, Jack said with a slight smile. It's comfort food. My mom used to make it when I was sick as a kid. Thora tried it. It was strange. Warm. Different. Why does it make me feel better? Because sometimes taking care of your body helps your mind remember it's worth taking care of, Jack explained. By week 3, the fortress staff couldn't believe what they were seeing. Commander Thora, the warrior who terrified 3 physicians into fleeing, was coming out of her room. Walking the corridors. Talking quietly with the human doctor. She even started eating regular meals again. The guards whispered among themselves. The human had done something impossible. Their deadliest warrior was healing. Jack needed access to Thora's medical history to better understand her condition. On day 22, he requested access to the fortress medical database. The commander granted it without hesitation. That should have been his first warning sign. He sat in a small office they'd given him, scrolling through files on a Lupaxian computer terminal. The interface was clunky, translated into English but still keeping the strange Lupaxian organization system. He was looking for Thora's previous psychological evaluations, hoping to understand what treatments they'd tried before. Then he found a folder labeled Commander Thora Final Assessment. Final. That word made his stomach turn. He opened it. The reports inside were detailed. Too detailed. Weeks of documentation about Thora's deteriorating mental state. Every outburst. Every refusal of treatment. Every moment of violence. All carefully recorded and analyzed. The conclusion was written in cold, clinical language that made Jack's blood run cold. Subject demonstrates irreversible psychological damage. Recommend immediate and permanent retirement from active service. Commander Thora is no longer fit for duty and poses a risk to herself and others. The report was dated 2 days before Jack received the message asking for his help. They'd already decided to retire her. To throw away their greatest warrior like a broken tool. The assessment was complete. The decision was made. So why had they called him? Jack kept reading. His hands started shaking. There was another section. External verification protocol. They wanted an outside expert, someone with no connection to the Lupaxian military, to witness Thora's condition and confirm their assessment. Someone who could provide an objective opinion that she was beyond help. They'd brought Jack here to be their scapegoat. To document her incurable madness, so they could justify discarding her without looking like they'd given up. A human doctor trying and failing would prove that nothing could be done. But there was more. Jack found another set of files buried deeper in the database. Research files. Studies on human psychology and trauma recovery. His hands were shaking so badly now he could barely control the mouse. The Lupaxians had been studying humans for years. Not just their military tactics or technology. Their minds. Specifically, how human soldiers recovered from psychological trauma that would permanently break a Lupaxian warrior. Jack read report after report, each one more disturbing than the last. Human soldiers experienced the same trauma as Lupaxians. Watched friends die. Made impossible choices. Killed when they didn't want to. But humans recovered. Not all of them, not easily, but they bounced back in ways that terrified the Lupaxians. A Lupaxian warrior who experienced severe trauma was considered permanently damaged. Retired. Put away. The cultural expectation was that you suppressed emotions or you broke completely. There was no middle ground. But humans talked about their trauma. Processed it. Cried about it. Went to therapy. Took time to heal. And somehow, impossibly, many of them came back stronger. The Lupaxians couldn't understand it. To them, it looked like weakness that somehow transformed into strength. The files showed they'd been debating for years whether human psychological methods could work on Lupaxians. Some scientists argued it was worth trying. Others insisted Lupaxian biology was too different, that their instincts were too strong. Jack realized with growing horror what this meant. They'd brought him here as an experiment. To test their theory. To see if a human could actually help a broken Lupaxian warrior using human methods. But they never intended to implement those methods across their military. They just wanted to know if it was possible. And if it failed, if Thora remained broken, then they had their justification. They could point to the human expert who tried everything and still couldn't fix her. Perfect documentation for their decision. Jack stood up so fast his chair fell over. He didn't bother picking it up. He walked straight to the commander's office, not caring about protocol or permission. The guards outside tried to stop him but he pushed past them. The commander looked up from his desk, surprised. "Dr. Miller, is something wrong?" "You used her," Jack said. His voice was shaking with rage. "You used me. You never wanted her to get better. You wanted her to fail so you could throw her away with a clear conscience." The commander's ears flattened slightly, but his expression remained neutral. "Dr. Miller, I don't know what you think you've found, but don't lie to me." Jack slammed his hands on the desk. "I read the files. All of them. The final assessment written before you even contacted me. The studies on human psychology. You brought me here as an experiment. To see if human methods work and to document failure when they didn't." The commander was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke and his voice was cold. "She is compromised. A warrior who hesitates, who questions orders, who feels guilt for necessary actions, is worthless to us. We needed confirmation from an outside expert that she was beyond recovery." "She's not beyond recovery," Jack shouted. "She's healing. She's getting better. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Because if she can heal, if she can question orders and still be strong, then your entire system is broken. You'd rather throw away your greatest warrior than admit that showing emotion isn't weakness." "She is no longer the weapon we need," the commander said flatly. "She's not a weapon." Jack's fist came down on the desk hard enough to make the commander's datapad jump. "She's a person. A living, thinking person who made an impossible choice and is trying to live with it. And you're terrified because she's proof that your people could be more than killing machines if you just let them." Outside the office, neither Jack nor the commander noticed the figure standing in the shadows of the corridor. Thora had come looking for Jack to tell him she'd eaten a full meal for the first time in weeks. She'd heard every word. Her claws extended slowly, scraping against the metal wall with a sound like knives on stone. But this time the rage building inside her wasn't self-destructive. This time she knew exactly who deserved it. Healing together, a story of strength and vulnerability. The fortress walls trembled as Thora's voice echoed through the stone corridors. But something was different this time. Her roar wasn't filled with pain or anger that came from suffering. It was the sound of someone who had found purpose, who had decided to fight back against the darkness in a completely different way. She turned to Jack with determination burning in her eyes. "We need to show them everything," she said quietly. "Every single session we've had. All our conversations. All the work we've done together." Jack felt his stomach drop. He understood what this meant. The military wouldn't see this as healing or progress. They would see it as betrayal. "They're going to destroy us for this," he said, not trying to hide the worry in his voice. "Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Everything we've worked for gone." Thora didn't hesitate. "Then let them try. Some things matter more than careers." Within hours, something incredible happened. Their therapy sessions weren't locked away in private files anymore. They were everywhere. The videos showed up on the Lupaxian military network, spreading like wildfire through every ship, every base, every outpost. Thousands upon thousands of warriors sat down and watched. They saw their greatest commander, the fiercest fighter they'd ever known, sitting across from a human doctor and talking about her pain. They watched her describe the nightmares. They listened as she explained what it felt like to carry the weight of so much loss. And they saw something that shattered everything they'd been taught. They watched a human teach a Lupaxian warrior that asking for help wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing anyone could do. The response was immediate and massive. Messages started flooding in from soldiers across the entire military. Veterans who had suffered alone for years finally felt brave enough to speak up. Soldiers who had been told their trauma made them inferior, that admitting pain meant they couldn't be trusted in combat, suddenly realized they weren't alone. The floodgates opened and everyone who had been hiding their struggles came forward at the same time. The military leadership panicked. They tried everything they could think of to shut it down, to delete the files, to silence the conversation. But they were too slow. The truth was already spreading too far and too fast. You can't unring a bell. That's when something nobody expected happened. The Emperor himself came forward. The old wolf, who had ruled for decades, who had always seemed untouchable and invulnerable, made a public address that shocked the entire galaxy. He stood before his people and admitted something he had never told anyone. He had his own trauma. He had spent decades in pain, suffering in silence, howling alone in the darkness where no one could hear him. He had believed that showing any weakness would destroy his authority, so he had kept everything buried deep inside. But watching Thora and Jack had changed him. He realized he had been wrong. He announced a brand new program, something revolutionary. The military would now offer cross-species psychiatric care. Humans and Lupaxians and any other species would work together to help soldiers heal. And he wanted Jack and Thora to lead it. Jack's personal communication device buzzed with a message from Earth High Command. He almost didn't want to read it. But when he did, his hands started shaking. The message was short and to the point. License reinstated. We apologize for the significant delays in processing your case. He showed the message to Thora without saying anything. She read it carefully, then huffed, that deep, rumbling sound that was the closest thing a Lupaxian had to laughter. Finally, she said. Took them long enough to figure out what they'd lost. Jack couldn't help but smile. You know what's funny? Humans and Lupaxians spent so long thinking we were nothing alike. We thought we were too different to ever really understand each other. But we're not that different at all. We're just both really terrible at admitting when we need help. We both pretend we can handle everything alone. We both think asking for support means we've failed somehow. Thora placed her massive paw on Jack's shoulder, and the gesture meant everything. Then we'll teach them, she said simply. All of them. We'll show them that asking for help isn't failure. We'll show them that healing together is actually the strongest thing anyone can do. What started in that small fortress between one human and one Lupaxian warrior eventually changed how the entire galaxy thought about strength and vulnerability. People across different worlds, different species, different cultures began to understand something fundamental. Real courage isn't about never being hurt or never being afraid. Real courage is what happens after you've been broken, when you decide to let someone help you put the pieces back together. And the greatest strength anyone possesses isn't their weapons or their stubbornness or their ability to survive alone. It's their willingness to admit they need help, and their belief that everyone deserves to heal.